Okay, so here we are in 2021. The way 2020 went, it seems that this year will be the biggest year of transition into this great reset. With such a terrible year in 2020, though there was many that were awakened out of their slumber, it amazes me how so many other people can still be under this strong delusion. I have to constantly remind myself that this was prophesied to be. Either way, when asking myself what is holding people back from waking up, the topic of the Matrix is always at the top of my list. The blame about people being asleep, walking like zombies, heading off of a cliff, goes back into the discussion that we have had on this channel in regards to the Matrix. In the first video, we discussed what the Matrix was. Again, the Matrix is a world that has been made to purposely deceive you, while at the same time it influences you to contribute satanic energy to help establish a new world order. It is the strong delusion that was prophesied of in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7. This is a very big topic to understand. It's hard for many people to grasp that the reality that a majority of the world lives in is not in fact reality. It is a scripted world built around massive structures of control that were put in place by a small group of wealthy, powerful, satanically led families that completely control all the major industries and factions of our world. In order to understand it and break out of it, the second part was about following the money. When you do that and follow the money trail, then you can understand how all these systems of control really have been put in place. In the next part of breaking out, I jumped over other crucial systems and discussed the system of our democracy and the illusion of our voice through our vote. Based on the time we were in, right before the election, it was a topic that I needed to tackle. But we need to get back into breaking out of this matrix. And the next system that needs to be covered is our education system. This is a huge weapon used in the mental war that they are engaging with us. You see, they could have built all these systems of economics and government and built all these grand illusions through the news and social organizations. But if we were taught to use our brains in a way that engages critical thinking, there will be no way for this massive mind game to take hold of us. So to keep this from happening, these puppet masters created a system that would keep the generations in line and make sure the population only knew what it was that they wanted them to know. And so the education system was created. Like all of the topics that will be discussed in this Matrix series, this is a subject that requires an adjustment of the way you are taught to think about something. Please note that I am not speaking against people gaining knowledge and wisdom, and I am all about learning. As this topic is discussed, please understand this. This channel and ministry would not be possible without the process of learning, reading, and using critical thinking. So please don't try to put this in a box and say that I am speaking against learning in school. I am all about education. I believe fully that we perish for our lack of knowledge. You must understand I am talking about the overall system that was created. In order to break out of the matrix, you must understand the system of control, indoctrination, and manipulation that they used against us through the guise of education. Let's begin. Okay, so there's a book that goes over the false structures of our education system. It's called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. In the preface, it makes an important claim of which I will start this subject with, taking some of what they have written while editing a few things. It explains, the world is engaged in a war. People write important books about war. Books documenting the battles fought, the names of the generals involved, the names of those who fired the first shot. This video is simply a video about the history of another kind of war. One fought using psychological methods. An over 100-year war. A different, more deadly, consequential war than any in which the world has ever been involved. A war which the average person in the world hasn't the foggiest idea is even occurring. The reason people do not understand this is because it has been fought in secret, in the schools of our nations around the world, targeting us and our children who are and have been captive in classrooms. The wagers of this war are using very sophisticated and effective tools. This war has, in fact, become the war to end all wars. If citizens on this earth can be brainwashed or robotized using dumbed down education to accept what those in control want, there will be no more wars. If there are no rights or wrongs, there will be no one wanting to right a wrong. Robots have no conscience. The only permissible conscience will be the United Nations or a global conscience. Whether an action is good or bad will be decided by a global government's global conscience, as recommended by Dr. Brock Chisholm, Executive Secretary of the World Health Organization, Interim Commission in 1947. And that is a good introduction to this subject. The people alive today have been aggressively attacked without any clue that it is happening. And what's worse is after they have been attacked and neutralized, when they have children, they allow their children to face the same fate as they did. And it's a continuous cycle. And this is how the war continues on. It also continues on because many of the low-level soldiers and lieutenants, the teachers and the principals, they are also engaging in the warfare and they have no real clue as well. So this is the overall picture that we are going to discuss. This is how the Matrix is able to survive in our minds. So before we talk about now, let's talk about the past. The world was not always so industrialized. Education around the world was different depending on where you went. For the most part, education wasn't as formal as it was indirect. Children educated themselves through self-directed play and exploration. You watch and learn as your parents and community did. It was quite different than what we know today. But that is getting too deep. Before the industrial world, people were responsible for their families. They either hunted or learned a skill that was able to produce for them a living, that was able to provide resources to support their family. In many civilized cultures, there was formal education, but the education was for an upper class. The most important thing to understand is that our education was not the same in the past as it is today. The whole world was not being taught the same subjects in the same way. You know, it's so ironic and stupid to me that people talk so much against the Bible. They talk about how the Bible is used as a form or tool of control. They claim that this book that a majority of them never have really read and just knows points from it, nothing more. They make all those claims about the Bible and then they send their children into public and private education systems, from where they are fully controlled and then indoctrinated through, way more than the Bible could ever do. It's just an example of how strong our delusion is. People will speak fully against the Bible, but then praise their education created by those they are trying to say wants to control them. Next time somebody talks to you and says that the Bible was used for control, ask them next, where do they send their kids to school? And then you'll see clearly the hypocrisy to explain to them. But I digress. What is education? According to the Oxford Dictionary, education is the process of receiving or giving systematic instruction, especially at a school or university. There is instruction relating to a system that is given and people are receiving. Organized education is a way to keep people mentally trapped from a person's introduction to it. The minute they are exposed to it, it can be likened to their mind being walked right into a box that traps it up without ability for escape. It creates a mental prison that individuals walk right into without ever knowing that it is happening. In my community, since I was young, all I ever heard was that in order to do well in this world, I needed to be educated. I needed an education. But that is so far from the truth. If we look at the most successful people in the history of this country, their success did not come from being highly educated, but from skills, from connections, from competitiveness, and a lot of other qualities that had nothing to do with their education level. John D. Rockefeller, for example, the most wealthy man in American history. If you remember, we spoke about him in Breaking Up the Matrix Part 1. He was not highly educated. Before he started his company Standard Oil, he attended and later dropped out of Cleveland's Central High School. He took a single business class at Folsom Mercantile College and then began working as a bookkeeper until he went into business for himself. So obviously, education is not a requirement for success in this country or world. But yet, that is the primary thought that is given to us since we are young. So why is it that this thought is promoted within society? Why is it that Bill Gates can drop out of college and become one of the declared richest people in the world, and education is still what is pushed and promoted? Why is it that in a country that has proven that those who actually go into business for themselves and work for themselves are far more successful than those that go get a job and work for others? Why is education the main activity promoted? Now, please understand, I'm not speaking against education as far as reading and writing. I believe strongly in knowing how to do those things. This is what I teach my children. It's not about the process of learning. It's all about who we are learning the process of learning from and who is teaching us how to learn. It's about our organized education system. But the answer to those questions that I just posed is that it's because this organized education is not about learning and knowledge. It's about control, indoctrination, and manipulation. You see, a highly educated person does not mean that they are actually smart, more than it means that they have highly taken to the system's giving of control, indoctrination, and manipulation. From my vantage point, from what I've seen, as I engage with this world, all of the most educated people that I meet, those that pride themselves on having doctorates and masters, those who have been in school till they were almost 30, most of these people, forgive me for saying, happen to be the most dumbest people I have ever come in contact with. And please do not generalize me. I'm not talking about everyone. But for me, I ask them a question outside of the box that their education has placed them in, and then they are lost. And then they are not able to use enough common sense and critical thinking to bring themselves out of that confusion. I've tried this experiment multiple times with doctors, lawyers, different people, asking them simple questions like, who prints our money and what the Federal Reserve is? And depending on their answers, try to lead them down a very common sense path. But by the time things start really clicking and the brain is starting to really work, defense starts to kick in more than critical thought. There is a barrier or wall that was put in place that did not allow their minds to go through. And this is what has been happening often with those that claim to be the most smartest people in our country because of their degrees. This subject is so very deep. I can make 4 parts on this subject and still only scratch the surface. So let me just get to the point. After the wealthiest, most powerful families in the world created a stranglehold on the world population in the late 19th century, and then moved on with their power grab through the process of central banking, they had enough power that it did not matter what they did. Their power would not be able to be dethroned unless the people rose up against them. It was no longer about power more than it was about control, and not by a form of physical slavery. You see, a physical slave can see their chains and who is actually controlling them. If these wealthy families were going to fulfill their purpose and the reason they were given all of this wealth and power, they had to do it without the people knowing that they actually existed. This would keep them from rising up. They needed to place themselves at the top of the box and hold the strings to a world population while no one knew they existed. And this was, of course, easier to do back then when there was no televisions or internet. Let me illustrate this point to help drive it home, because it really is an important part to understanding this mental prison. So let's say myself and 12 other families have amassed massive wealth and power over the world. I mean, we own everything. We control money. We are the lenders of the world. We control all major business industries. In order for a business to break through, they have to come through our doors, or we can exert so much control we can squash the business and buy it for pennies on the dollar later, or just make our own version of the product and use our influence to make it reach people faster and more effectively. We also control politics, which is then controlling the people because they believe they actually have a voice. We have so much control through money and our underground secret society that those that are actually in charge of the people that were voted in are more loyal to us than the people that they claim they are serving. We just have a massive amount of control. You follow? Now here's the thing. During the time of building and accumulating this power, we stepped on many toes that we now have a very bad public image. We are basically slave masters without a physical plantation, and the worst thing is that people actually began to really know it. We have a job to steer the people into a world that we think is a better future for everyone. Our families were tasked with steering the world into a new world order where our God is worshipped above no one else. So how do we do this if everyone hates us? We must do 2 things simultaneously. First thing we must do, we must build the structures for this world ourselves through the use of our money, power, and control. but we cannot look like we are doing it ourselves. We will market it to the world that we are just giving our money away for the betterment of humanity. And secondly, while we are doing that, we must control the flow of information. This must be done through controlling our news for the adults, and then with the children, who are our future, we must control what they will be taught. If we can get them from when they are young and teach them how to engage in the world that we have built, and as they have children and their children have children, who we are, how much control we have, what we have done, all of this information will never be known to them. And even if a few try to expose us, it won't even matter, because our system will be the only thing that matters to these masses. The best part is that these people might deal with the dissenters for us without us having to do anything ourselves. We truly can become the unseen hand. And this very general example is how the organized education system that we currently are under was made. Now, please don't overgeneralize me or get me wrong. There are, of course, obvious things that are done that are important, like the teaching of reading, writing, and arithmetic, math. But even today, we can see that those things are even being taught in a way that is not desired for our children to be smart. In reading, they moved away from phonics to learning sight words. Instead of teaching how to phonetically sound out words, they teach them just to memorize them. In math, they have invented new math that makes simple math problems extremely complex. Like people can even debate whether 2 plus 2 equals 4. And teachers can get in trouble if they are found teaching in more traditional ways. They have introduced subjects like science to them, which at one time was highly debatable, but now is a prerequisite like reading and math. They teach us history and what they call social studies, which presents the world that they have created to us and what we should know about it. They create our heroes and our enemies and tell us the stories we should believe about them all. We are taught the version of history that they want us to believe. Like, we must believe that Columbus discovered America, although people already lived here. We recited Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492.
Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492.
We were taught that the earth was round because of Columbus when he challenged that thought, when everyone thought at that time that the earth was flat. We were taught that blacks in America really had no history before the Atlantic slave trade, and we were never actually told who actually funded slavery. We were taught that the American dream is what we are being educated to obtain. I mean, I could bring up a whole list of indoctrination that we were taught to believe in. But the thing is that that's just with the information. If you go over all of what was taught in our education system, you will see indoctrination if you ever do your own research and go past the structures you were taught and then you read other books never promoted in school. Our indoctrination is very easy to see. But the thing is that information is not the only thing we are indoctrinated with. The first thing that we are taught from kindergarten, maybe in some preschools, is conformity, allegiance, and obedience. And that is true regardless of what nation you are in. Eventually, this training will move from conformity, allegiance, and obedience from our nation to the world government. But that's getting off subject. From the minute we send our children to school, they pledge allegiance to the flag. That's the first thing they do every morning. Even in what we call Christian homes, most of the children don't pray first and read their Bibles in the morning. They watch cartoons, get on a bus, and go pledge allegiance to the flag. I wonder if as they grow up, who they are more loyal to, God or their flag. Anyways, the whole education system is a system of classes. It's how they label the children as they enter society. They know who will abide and follow the rules, or who does not follow and needs to be suppressed. The grading system and the whole way that we have been taught to evaluate performance is not about how smart a child is. It's about how well they conform and are obedient to the system. Let me show you that this is true. Think about it. How many times on elementary school report cards do you see listens and follows directions, has a positive attitude, raises hand, etc.? They are also grading behaviors as well as their understanding of information. This is because they are grading each one as a citizen and understanding where each one will fit in. It's an assessment for the system. A straight A student does not make a child a genius. It just means they listen well and are easiest to control. A failing student does not mean the child is dumb. It's just that they are not conforming to the system. Now, obviously, this is not always true. There are smart children that don't conform but can easily get an A. And there are children that are not as intelligent that won't do well in school, regardless if they listen and conform well. But all in all, our grading and our organized education system is just about where we are placed in society. Those that ask too many questions, that don't fall in line within the system, are labeled early as threats. And the school system will work to lower their place in the system as they are about to enter into the world later. After K through 12, we are then walked into the next path of our life that says whether we will be successful in this world. Now, mind you, America was a leader in the world because they showed that the streets were paved with gold. People could come from other countries without any formal education, thrive, and do much better than the Americans that were raised under the education system. Why is that? Because many of the people that came from other countries came to work for themselves and not be under the control of anyone. The citizens that were taught in this American school system were taught to be employees and get a job. They were taught to be under the control of others. And under this education system, we were taught that in order to make it in this world, we must get a college degree. But yet again, the most successful people in this country were entrepreneurs, and they teach their children to be this as well. Unless you are seeking a professional degree, like being a doctor, engineer, or lawyer, that requires more training than your high school education, college should not be required, except that the system made it so, because the employers started making it one of those things that will place you above the others. Again, not because you're proven to be smarter or more qualified or better suited, but that you are more proven to fall in line within their system. That's one reason why those coming out of the military are given such an advantage in the job market. It's because they clearly understand rules and chain of command. It really is all about control. I went to college and received a business degree, which I personally believe is one of the biggest scams in America. You are getting a degree from a school to be a businessman. I mean, business degrees from schools like Wharton or Harvard, where actual CEOs are actually educated from, those make sense. But a business degree from a local college or other popular schools, just so I can get a job at a bank, is ridiculous. There are people that started at a bank as a teller from the time they left high school, and they have a higher position than an undergrad with a bachelor's degree that wants to enter into baking. If education was the primary driver of our success, that should never be. I'm just saying. I'm trying to get you to think differently. Anyways, what happens in our system is that our education has now been the place and source of who we are. We force it onto our children as well. By embracing this system of the matrix, all we are doing is entering into a mental prison that does not present the real world that is actually in front of us. Because of their education, many people are not able to see the real world that is in front of them. They must believe that their education and allegiance to the system is what will save them and make them successful. The funny thing is that most successful people we see in the world are actually the most uneducated people, but they just have struck out on their own and used their talents, resources, connections, etc. to get ahead. But those stuck in the mental matrix, though they see this, they are not mentally able to think differently to bring themselves out of it. I've heard it explained very simply that there is one class of people that have been made to work for those that don't work, and they have been placed in a mental prison that keeps them in this class as an unknown slave. It's no wonder why John D. Rockefeller, who by the way has been the United States' biggest contributor to our education system, him and Carnegie started the General Education Board in the United States. The General Education Board was the first major structure put in place to organize our education. Rockefeller has been quoted as saying, "I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers." It's obvious that this goal has been realized and accomplished. Being led under their education system, we are indoctrinated in a world system that teaches principles and rules that are not true. Think about it. In America, they teach us about our rights and how important our political voice is through the power of our vote. But then they never teach us things like about the Electoral College and how it actually works. They teach us about the American dream and obtaining wealth and success, but never teach us how money is created and who is in control of our monetary system. They teach us about the history of this country, but they never teach us about the most wealthiest, most powerful people in American history. They teach us what they want us to know, and because we are placed into it from so young, it is very hard to break out of the mental prison. This education system really is a huge mental barrier to break away from, and it can be so hard, because who has the time to be retaught all things that were taught wrong to us over our lifetimes? What we should all know is that this world is run by satanic families who have pledged their allegiance to Satan in order to create a world that he will be worshipped as a god. We are taught to rebel against the God of the Bible and live a life contrary to his laws and ways. We are taught that the purpose of our existence is to thrive in the system, though those that do struggle with depression, drug abuse, and isolation. We are taught that this system works if we all do our part and participate in it, though they keep showing that this is not true. We are taught to trust science over God, even though for centuries this thought was always highly debated and contested. We are being led into a new world order because our minds are not able to fully comprehend the real world that we live in, and that weakness keeps our minds stuck in the matrix that adds to the prophesied strong delusion. The reason this ministry is called Truth Unedited is because of my re-education process I had to go through. I realized there were many truths that were given, but a lot of those truths were just edited, either leaving out crucial information or just reframing it to fit in a certain narrative. We have just been given edited truths that are actually just a lie. But these lies are easier to swallow because it's presented around truths. I know this topic can be overwhelming because what it means is that for the majority of us, we just grew up in lies. And then how do we even start to awaken from the lies? Where do we even start? What do we even do with our children? Let me just say, if you are able to, the answer is to homeschool. I know many are not able to homeschool, but if you are able and would like some information or resources, follow at Arrow Spring Academy on Instagram and go to their website, arrowspringacademy.com. Like my family, they've been homeschooling their children for almost a decade and are a great resource. But homeschooling is a definite way of protecting your children because you control what they learn and who they are following. I know this awakening can be a lot to deal with. It was for me. I did well in school. Learning the information and reciting it back to them came easy for me. But critical thinking was something I did, and I often got chastised for it. When I realized there was a major gap in my understanding of this world, and I only understood parts of a story, and other parts were just full-out lies, it was hard to deal with initially because I had to humble myself and say, I know nothing. And for me, this wasn't something that was easy for me to do, but something I had to do. But here's the thing. At this time, you don't need to go through my process. Father brought me and a lot of others through a lot to be able to tell you this concretely without a shadow of a doubt. This is what he led me to tell you. You don't need to search out the lies. This is a time-consuming activity that does not produce the right results in the end. This is not what is needed at this time. You honestly don't even have the time to do this. And the truth is that they are going to introduce more and more lies to us. For those that only investigate the lie, they have a very bad grasp on the world as well. And though they have identified that they are being lied to, they are still caught in the matrix. The only way of breaking out of the matrix is coming out of the strong delusion prophesied in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. I've been reading the scripture a few times in my most recent videos. It hasn't been intentional, but Father keeps leading me here. The important thing is not knowing the lies, because they will keep making new lies. It's knowing the truth, because when you know the truth, you will know when the lie has been presented. You have to come out of the strong delusion. You need to live in the truth and love it, even if sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow. And as you grow, there will be plenty like this. You should know that everything that we are going through in this world is about bringing us into a new world order and the coming of the false Messiah who we know as the Antichrist. And those who will accept him will be under the strong delusion. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9 through 12 says, "The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth that they might be saved. And for this reason, Elohim will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who do not believe the truth, but have pleasure in unrighteousness." The most important thing is to understand the truth, and that is first who we are created by and who we must submit to. What he has done for us through the sacrificing of his son, Yahshua the Messiah. Understand the main conflict of this world, which is Lucifer wanting to be like the Most High. Understand that there are only two sides, and if you are not fully on one side, which is salvation only through belief in Yahshua and committed to his will, then you are on the other side. You must learn the truth of the gospel and understand the will of our Father. This is what you should commit yourself to learning. Let me explain why. The devil is a master manipulator. He will promote one lie after another. The lies can come from one place or another, even from places that you feel should be safe, like at church. Lies are everywhere. The most important thing to understand is who our Father is and what his nature is. Understand him and his ways. You may not understand all because our ways are not his, but you can understand what is from him and what is not. What is the difference between those walking in the spirit and those walking in the flesh? Galatians chapter 5. You must understand our Father and his truth and his nature and have a relationship with him. After this is done successfully, you will not only have found your name written in his book of life, but you will also be able to have better discernment on what he wants you to know and what you must do. Part of our organized education system is also about placing ourselves in the driver's seat in our lives without consulting and being led by our Father in heaven. We take him out of the picture and jump headfirst in this Darwinian survival of the fittest world. When we focus on the truth and only him, we then can better understand where the lies are being told, and trust me, there are plenty. You must understand the truth, the way, and the life. Now, I do have many videos that will challenge your worldview on many topics. I have playlists that you should go through, like the Exposing the World playlist and this Matrix series, that go into a great deal of these lies that are told. But I wouldn't have you start there, and I do not want to be the only source of your truth. I have articles on my website that I will place in the description box of this video that speak about topics I will learn about that expose the lies of this world. But I will not start there as well. I have a list of resources and books on my website that can help feed your mind. But again, I would not start there. I would start with the Word. Read your Bibles. That's where you start, and as you read, he will spark in you where he wants you to go. I have a Bible study video playlist that discusses different subjects, and I have a whole history of religion playlist that will walk you through the Bible and then discuss the lies. If you want to start in video form, I recommend starting there. But please understand, there is no substitute for the truth found in the scriptures. The History of Religion series is just a way of promoting the reading of your own Bible and should never take the place of reading on your own. This video spoke about a great deal of things, but in the end, I know it just scratched the surface on a huge topic that I will wait for Father to guide me on where to go next with. The point that needs to be understood is that there is a huge part of control being placed over the mass population, locking us into invisible chains that we cannot see. And they have been able to do this by placing us into their organized education systems. If you want to be free, you cannot let others control your mind. Knowledge is not about reciting information, but it's about continuous growth and learning through the process of experiences, gathering information, and engaging in critical thinking. You must break free out of the matrix and get out of mental slavery while you still have time to do so. This year of 2021 tells me there's a lot more in terms of lies that will be coming upon us. And if you're not actively right now working to free your mind, you will be lost deeper into the matrix. It's time to wake up. It's time to be free. Bring all thoughts captive to the obedience of our Messiah Yahshua and walk in the purpose and in the free life you were created to live in. Be blessed and be redeemed from the wicked snares and traps that are set for you. Walk in the fullness of the knowledge of our Master and let your mind be set free. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please don't forget to like this and share it with others. If you have not already done so, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Elohim willing, I upload every Friday. Please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. If for any reason you do not see my videos on YouTube, please go to my website to find my videos on there. As always, I really would like to thank all of those who support this ministry. You know who you are. Your contributions have been an extreme blessing to this ministry, and I am very thankful for you. Thank you for being a blessing and your continued support to this mission. Okay. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. I love you all.